What's the most fucked up thing someone has told you about themselves after barely getting to know them? This was a patient. Middle-aged guy in short-term nursing home for a hip replacement or something. I'm trying to get to know him to figure out what kind of skills he may need to work on in order to return home safely. I ask him, "Do you cook?" He responds, "I used to, but then the cops found out." Years ago I went on a date with a guy I met via AOL Personals. Within 5 minutes of the date, he told me he was working on a book about speed seduction. And he was so confident he could speed seduce me, he already had a condom on ready for me. I hightailed out of there full speed. I googled him a while back and turns out he ended up self-publishing the book. She said that if I wanted she would kill her parents so we can live at her house. I never went on a second date with her. Well, at least you know there's a crazy woman out there that's willing to kill her own family for you. That's something. Yay, too much. I was doing a service call at a house and just making small talk when the owner mentioned out of the blue that she's married to her uncle. I've been there twice, and both times they felt the need to tell me. It's kinda weird. Doesn't that make her dad's sister-in-law? And her own aunt. That also makes her kids her cousins. And I can only assume it makes her father furious. It would make me angry if my brother married my ex. Wait. This happened to my wife. We had just moved into a new house and the lady next door came over to introduce herself to my wife. As she was talking, she informed my wife that her husband was mad at her because she had farted when he was going down on her. I think I would have a difficult time not busting out laughing if someone told me this. And remembering it every time I saw her. Be like, "Oh Lord, here comes Poots." Puss in Poots. I was a teenager working retail and there was a fidgety older woman I worked with. I was always very nice to her, but she was just a coworker at the end of the day. One day she told me about her grandpa molesting her when she was young. Her parents didn't believe her, so it continued until he died. She said she was glad he died and was happy at his funeral. I really had no clue what to say since this was out of nowhere. I just said I was really sorry it had happened. Felt really bad for her because I could tell it still really bothered her. At work, me, "Hey new guy, nice to meet you." New guy, "Yeah, you too. Check out this picture of a dude in a coffin. That's my nephew. He was killed in a drive-by last month." Me, "Let me show you where the coffee maker is." I went with my dad to do an estimate for some work on a house. When I met the owners I literally only said, "Hi, your house is gorgeous." And the wife went into full detail on how they'd bought it the year before because their 15-year-old daughter was attacked and raped. She ended up pregnant from it. They were super religious and convinced her to keep the baby. They pulled her out of school for a year while she was pregnant. They bought the new house in a new school district so she could go finish high school without having to face her former classmates. They were now raising the baby as her younger brother. I was pretty much speechless. What do you even say to that? You should probably just tell people like me that you moved for work and you have 2 kids. That he broke in and beat the shit out of a guy who raped his daughter, put the guy in the hospital, with a baseball bat. I totally get why he did it, but I have no idea why he thought it was a good story to tell a new coworker. I have no idea why he thought it was a good story to tell a new coworker. He took one look at you and was like, "This looks like a guy who would rape my daughter, I'd better not let him get any ideas." Jesus Christ. No, I don't think it was him. I was buying an AC at Home Depot during Black Friday sales. There were none on the shelf, so an employee was helping me get the display model. He carried it all the way to the cashier for me. I thanked him and wished him a happy holiday season. A shadow crossed his face and he looked me straight in the eye and told me he killed someone a year ago during the holidays. He ran a man over and killed him. It was ruled an accident, but he said he won't ever celebrate a holiday again because of that. Edit to add more info and answer a couple questions. I thought the employee was ducking with me as well. I did some searching online when I got home and found the news article, and he did indeed hit and kill a man. It was a super raining evening and just starting to get dark. The person killed was heavily intoxicated and veered into the oncoming traffic. Lady at work started telling me about land she owned in another state that is not part of America. She then started talking about how every American is a bond to the government, and your SSN is just your bond number. Wealthy people own those bonds and own you. She started naming off prices of bonds based off people's races and genders. This was all said after I simply asked her what she was doing with her long weekend coming up. Weirdly enough, I had a dude tell me all this unprompted during my first night shift at Dollar General. All I asked was if he wanted his change. Do I want change? The only change I want is for the government to abolish the bond system. When I was around 10, I lived beside this weird family. The little girl was probably 4 or 5, always clinging to me anytime we were outside. She talked incessantly and always wanted to hang out with me, asking to come into my house. She annoyed me so badly, but she was really sweet and excited about everything. One day she tells me, "Do you ever naked wrestle with your dad?" I told her that's really weird and no, I don't even know what that means. She then tells me she and her dad and brother naked wrestle a lot. Forgive me, but I was 10, I had no idea what the duck I was being told. I still think about that to this day. The guilt eats at me. I wish I had understood more and told someone. I also had a classmate in high school I'd give rides to and from school so she wouldn't have to make her dad do it. After we graduated, I saw her working at the mall. She then told me her dad used to molest her and she was finally able to see a therapist and work through it. When someone says these things happen more often than we realize, they're not wrong. I have had years and years of training on signs of this type of abuse, and it will forever break my heart and make me so angry. It's unfathomable. I had to stay late when I was a manager as one of the female employees' parents were running late. She broke down to me about how she had been sexually abused by her best friend's father and that he had been doing it to her best friend for years. He was in jail after he did it to her, as she reported him, and sadly the daughter hated her for turning in her father as she thought it was normal behavior. She had only been working there for a few weeks at this point, and we had probably only worked together a handful of times, so I really didn't know her that well yet, but I think she just needed someone to know she was struggling with it and someone to tell her it wasn't her fault and what he did was wrong. I think it's easier to tell a thing like this to someone you don't know well. I'm good friends with someone now who, at the beginning of our friendship, confided a similar thing to me. And they hadn't told other friends they'd known for much longer. I think there's a bit of safety in the idea that even if they get rejected by this person, at least they didn't know them well. And it's a hell of a thing to hold on to alone, you know? Agreed. When I was a 17-year-old bank teller, a customer responded to my "How are you today?" with "Not great, I just found out my husband has been molesting my daughter." I think she just desperately needed to tell someone, and I was a safe outlet. I get the need to unburden oneself of awful traumatic shit like that. But that's a hell of a bomb to drop on some teenager you don't even know. I wouldn't know what to say in that situation. You're right, luckily, I wasn't triggered by that, but I could have been. I managed to stammer out "I'm really sorry" before we proceeded to transact like she hadn't said anything. Funnily enough, in my 20s and early 30s, I wound up spending almost a decade working as a rape crisis counselor, so I heard and saw lots of ugly shit. This guy I'd worked with for a couple days told me he had been meeting older men at a state park and having sex for money. We worked at an upscale deli. Hustler out there slinging salami day and night. Duck you, Arby's. This guy's got the meats. New roommate told me her current boyfriend got kicked out of college for sexual assault and was under investigation for another case of sexual assault. Wanted my opinion about it within like 2 hours or meeting. Completely disregarded that my opinion was run. Everyone keeps saying that, but I don't think any of you understand how complicated this is. You don't know what he's like when he's not raping people.